Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the ESS Liberty, watching the massive alien ship approach Earth. The vessel was 3 times larger than anything humans had ever built. Its smooth silver surface reflected the sunlight like a mirror. Jake had been in space for 15 years, but nothing had prepared him for this moment. First contact with an alien species was happening, and he was right in the middle of it. Dr. Katie Wells stood beside him, her hands shaking slightly as she held her tablet. She had spent her entire career studying the possibility of alien life, but seeing it with her own eyes was different. The alien ship moved with grace that human ships could never match. It seemed to glide through space without any visible engines or thrust. Admiral Rick Barnes watched from Earth's command center, surrounded by screens showing the alien approach. Every military base on the planet was on high alert. Fighter jets circled major cities, though everyone knew they would be useless against technology this advanced. Rick had fought in 3 wars during his career, but this was unlike anything he had ever faced. The alien ship stopped just outside Earth's moon. A smaller craft detached from it and headed toward the Liberty. Jake ordered his crew to prepare for docking, though their ship had never been designed to connect with alien technology. The engineering team worked frantically to create an airlock that might work. Lisa Chang ran through the corridors of the Liberty, carrying equipment she had designed in the past week. As Earth's best engineer, she had been tasked with making sure the 2 ships could connect safely. She had no idea if her work would hold up to alien technology, but it was humanity's best attempt. The alien shuttle attached to the Liberty with a soft thud. The airlock systems worked perfectly, much to Lisa's relief. A green light appeared on her control panel, indicating the connection was secure. Jake straightened his uniform and walked toward the airlock with Katie beside him. The airlock door opened and Ambassador Zektar stepped through. The alien was tall and thin, with pale blue skin that seemed to glow softly. Its eyes were large and dark, and it wore robes that seemed to shift color as it moved. When it spoke, the words came through a translation device attached to its chest. "Greetings, humans of Earth. I am Ambassador Zektar of the Villani Empire, representing the Galactic Federation. We have come to evaluate your species for membership in our community." The voice was calm and formal, but Jake could hear something that sounded like boredom. Katie stepped forward, trying to hide her excitement. "Ambassador, we are honored by your visit. I am Dr. Katie Wells, and this is Captain Jake Morrison. We represent Earth's government and military." Zektar looked at them both for a long moment, then made notes on a device that appeared in its hand. "Yes, we have observed your species for some time. You have recently achieved faster-than-light travel, which qualifies you for evaluation. However, your technology is quite primitive compared to Federation standards." Jake felt his jaw tighten at the word primitive, but he kept his expression neutral. "We may not be as advanced as your people, but we're willing to learn and contribute to the galactic community." The ambassador made more notes. "Contribution will indeed be necessary. Your species shows promise in certain areas, particularly in resource extraction and manual labor. The Federation can offer you protection and guidance in exchange for your services." Over the next 3 days, Zektar toured Earth with a team of alien scientists. They visited major cities, military bases, and industrial centers. Jake accompanied them on most visits, watching as the aliens examined human technology with expressions that clearly showed disappointment. At the Pentagon, Admiral Barnes showed them Earth's most advanced weapons and defense systems. The aliens looked at the displays with what Jake could only describe as amusement. When Barnes demonstrated a new missile system, one of the alien scientists actually laughed. "This explosive technology is quite basic," the scientist said through its translator. "We used similar weapons 10,000 years ago, before we discovered energy projection methods." Rick's face turned red, but he maintained his composure. "Our weapons may be simple, but they're effective for our needs." "Indeed," Zektar replied. "They will serve adequately for the type of work we have in mind for your species." Katie tried to showcase human scientific achievements, taking the aliens to research facilities and universities. She showed them medical advances, computer technology, and space exploration equipment. The aliens examined everything politely but showed little interest. "Your biological research shows some creativity," Zektar admitted when they visited a hospital. "However, your methods are quite crude. We solved most of these medical problems millennia ago." Lisa demonstrated her latest engineering projects, including the airlock system that had allowed the first meeting. She had hoped to impress the aliens with human innovation and problem-solving abilities. Instead, they seemed confused by what they saw as unnecessarily complicated solutions. "Your approach is interesting," one alien engineer said. "Very inefficient, but it shows a certain primitive ingenuity. With proper guidance, your species might develop useful technical skills." On the final day, Earth's leaders gathered in the United Nations building to hear the Federation's verdict. Zektar stood before representatives from every nation, delivering judgment on humanity's future. After careful evaluation, the Galactic Federation has classified your species as Tier 7 primitive. This means you are suitable for basic resource extraction, simple manufacturing, and military conscription in non-critical roles. In exchange for these services, the Federation will provide protection from hostile species and access to basic galactic technology. The room fell silent. Jake watched as world leaders processed what they had just heard. Humanity was being offered a place in the galaxy, but as servants rather than equals. "We understand this may be difficult to accept," Zektar continued. "However, your species lacks the technological and cultural development necessary for full Federation membership. This arrangement will allow you to contribute while learning from more advanced civilizations." President Martinez of the American Federation stood up. "And if we refuse this offer?" Zektar's expression didn't change. "Refusal would leave your species unprotected. The galaxy contains many hostile forces that would view Earth as an easy target. Primitive species that attempt independence rarely survive long." Jake felt anger building in his chest, but he knew the ambassador was probably right. Humanity had just learned they weren't alone in the universe, and they were already being told they were too weak to stand on their own. The vote was close, but Earth's leaders eventually accepted the Federation's terms. Within weeks, alien mining equipment arrived on Earth, along with recruitment officers looking for human workers and soldiers. Jake watched from the Liberty as his planet began its transformation from independent world to Federation protectorate. Rick Barnes stood in his office looking out at the alien ships now stationed around Earth. His military was being integrated into Federation forces, with human soldiers assigned to alien commanders. Everything he had worked for his entire career was being handed over to beings who saw humans as barely above animals. Katie continued her research, but now under alien supervision. Every discovery had to be approved by Federation scientists before it could be implemented. Her excitement about first contact had turned into frustration as she realized humans were expected to follow rather than contribute. Lisa found her engineering projects rejected in favor of alien technology. The innovations she had spent years developing were dismissed as primitive curiosities. She was assigned to maintain alien equipment instead of creating new human designs. Jake remained captain of the Liberty, but his ship was now part of the Federation fleet. His orders came from alien commanders who treated him like a junior officer, despite his years of experience. The proud vessel that had represented humanity's reach for the stars was now just another small ship in an alien navy. As Earth settled into its new role, few humans realized that this arrangement would not last forever. The galaxy was about to change in ways no one could predict, and when it did, humanity would discover strengths they never knew they possessed. The beings who had dismissed them as primitive were about to learn a very dangerous lesson about underestimating the human spirit. 6 months had passed since Earth became part of the Galactic Federation. Lieutenant Colonel Amy Rodriguez stood in the rain outside Denver, watching alien ships fill the sky above her city. These weren't the peaceful vessels that had arrived during first contact. These ships were damaged, smoking, and fleeing from something terrible. Amy had been a Marine for 12 years before the aliens arrived. Now she commanded a mixed unit of human soldiers and alien troops, though the aliens still treated her like a child playing at war. That was about to change in ways none of them could imagine. Commander Steve Phillips watched from his bridge as Federation warships limped into Earth's solar system. His converted human destroyer, the ESS Denver, had been upgraded with alien technology, but it still looked primitive next to the massive Federation vessels. Many of the alien ships showed signs of fierce battle, with hull breaches sealed by emergency patches. Admiral Jake Morrison received the emergency transmission from Federation High Command while he was reviewing supply reports. The message was brief but terrifying. An ancient enemy called the Krex Dominion had emerged from the galactic core. They possessed technology that made the Federation look like children with toys. Entire star systems had fallen in days. The Krex were coming, and Earth was about to become the Federation's last stand. Dr. Helen Carter ran through the corridors of the research facility outside Chicago, carrying data tablets and sample containers. The Federation had just delivered the first captured Krex technology, and she was part of the team assigned to study it. What she saw in the preliminary scans made her hands shake. The Krex devices were beyond anything humans or even the Federation had ever created. Sergeant Pete Johnson helped load ammunition into transport trucks while alien refugees poured off landing craft. The beings who had once looked down on humans as primitives now came to Earth begging for protection. Pete had fought in 3 wars before the aliens arrived, and he recognized the look of absolute terror in their eyes. The first Krex ships appeared at the edge of the solar system 3 days later. They were massive black vessels that seemed to absorb light instead of reflecting it. Federation sensors could barely detect them, and the few energy readings they got made no sense according to known physics. Amy watched from a hilltop as the Krex fleet approached. The Federation had positioned their remaining ships between Earth and the enemy, but everyone knew it wouldn't be enough. The same weapons that had destroyed 100 worlds were now pointed at humanity's home. The battle began without warning. Krex weapons tore through Federation shields like they weren't there. Alien warships that had seemed invincible to humans exploded in seconds. Steve watched in horror as ships 10 times larger than his destroyer vanished in balls of green fire. But the Federation had learned something during their retreat. The Krex were unbeatable in space, but they seemed to struggle with ground combat. Their forces were designed for overwhelming technological superiority, not the messy business of fighting. On planetary surfaces, Earth would become a fortress world, and humans would help defend it. Amy received her new orders while explosions lit up the sky above Denver. Human soldiers were being integrated into defense positions around the planet. The aliens didn't expect much from them, but they needed every weapon they could get. What they didn't realize was that humans had been preparing for war their entire history. The first Krex landing craft hit Earth's surface near major cities around the globe. The creatures that emerged were unlike anything humans had seen. They stood 12 feet tall, covered in black armor that seemed to move like liquid. Their weapons fired beams of energy that could cut through tank armor. Pete Johnson's squad was positioned in the ruins of downtown Denver when the Krex attacked. The alien creatures advanced in perfect formation, just like the Federation troops did. They expected the human defenders to break and run like other primitive species had done. Instead, Pete ordered his men to do something the Krex had never encountered. They disappeared. Human soldiers had learned urban warfare in cities across Earth. They knew how to use rubble, sewers, and destroyed buildings to their advantage. While the Krex marched down main streets, humans attacked from windows, rooftops, and underground tunnels. Amy coordinated the defense from a command bunker beneath the city. She had alien advisors with her, but they were useless in this type of fighting. The Federation fought wars with massive fleets and overwhelming technology. Humans fought wars with tactics, teamwork, and pure stubborn refusal to quit. The Krex began to slow their advance as human resistance grew stronger. The creatures were used to enemies who fought in organized formations. They couldn't adapt to fighters who appeared from nowhere, struck hard, and vanished before they could respond. Steve Phillips brought his destroyer down into Earth's atmosphere, something Federation commander said was impossible with a ship that size. He used the vessel's weapons to support ground troops while alien pilots watched in amazement. Human crews pushed their equipment beyond safe limits, turning spaceships into flying artillery platforms. Dr. Helen Carter worked around the clock to understand Krek's technology. She discovered something that made her heart race with excitement. The Krek's devices were incredibly advanced, but they were also completely specialized. Each tool did one thing perfectly, but couldn't adapt to new situations. Human technology was primitive by comparison, but it was flexible. The battle for Denver lasted 6 days. When it ended, the Kreks had retreated from the city for the first time in their recorded history. Human defenders had held positions that alien generals said were impossible to defend. They had used tactics that made no sense to either Federation or Krek's military doctrine. Amy stood in the ruins of her city, surrounded by alien officers who looked at her with new respect. The beings who had once dismissed humans as primitive now asked her how she had achieved the impossible. Her answer was simple. Humans didn't fight fair, and they never gave up. Jake Morrison received reports from battlefields around the planet. Everywhere the pattern was the same. Human forces were holding positions longer than anyone expected. They were using weapons and tactics that confused both allies and enemies. Most importantly, they were learning faster than anyone thought possible. Federation had brought humanity into the galactic community as servants and soldiers. They had expected humans to follow orders and die bravely like other primitive species. Instead, they were discovering that humans had their own ideas about warfare. Pete Johnson's squad had grown from 8 men to 30 during the battle. Human soldiers who had been scattered across different units were finding each other and forming new teams. They shared tactics, weapons, and information faster than their alien commanders could track. Steve Phillips found himself commanding not just his own ship, but a small fleet of human vessels that had started working together without orders. They were developing new formations and attack patterns that Federation doctrine said were impossible. The Kreks had conquered dozens of worlds using the same tactics. They overwhelmed defenders with superior technology, then occupied the planet with minimal resistance. Earth was supposed to fall within days, just like all the others. Instead, the planet had become a grinding war of attrition. Human defenders made every street cost the enemy dearly. They turned entire cities into killing fields where advanced technology meant less than knowledge of the terrain. Dr. Helen Carter made a discovery that changed everything. While studying damaged Krek's equipment, she found that their weapons had a critical weakness. They were designed to penetrate energy shields and advanced armor, but they were less effective against primitive materials like steel and concrete. Human defenses, built with simple materials and basic engineering, were actually harder for Krek's weapons to destroy than Federation fortifications. The same technology gap that had made humans seem primitive was now keeping them alive. Amy received new orders from Federation High Command. Instead of being assigned to alien units, human forces were being grouped together under human commanders. The aliens were finally admitting that humans might understand warfare better than they had realized. As the first month of fighting ended, something had changed on Earth. The planet was scarred by battle, but it was still free. Human soldiers had proven they could stand against the most advanced military force in the galaxy. The beings who had dismissed them as primitive were starting to realize they might have made a serious mistake. The Kreks had never failed to conquer a world before, but Earth was different. The humans defending it fought with a ferocity and creativity that neither the Kreks nor the Federation had expected. The galaxy was about to learn that sometimes the most dangerous enemies are the ones you underestimate. The war was just beginning, and humanity was about to show the universe what they were truly capable of when their backs were against the wall. 1 year had passed since the Kreks first attacked Earth. General Tony Mitchell stood in what used to be Central Park in New York City, now a massive military command center surrounded by defensive walls 20 feet high. Human engineers and alien workers labored side by side, building weapons that no one had ever imagined before. Tony had been promoted 3 times during the war. The Federation commanders were finally admitting that humans understood ground warfare better than any species they had encountered. What surprised everyone, including Tony himself, was how quickly humans had adapted to alien technology. Commander Lisa Chang worked in an underground facility beneath the ruins of Silicon Valley. Her team had taken Federation energy weapons and completely redesigned them. The aliens had built their guns to fire single, precise shots. Lisa's team modified them to spray energy like machine guns. Federation engineers said it was impossible and wasteful. Human soldiers said it worked perfectly. The war had changed Earth in ways no one could have predicted. Every major city was now a fortress. Factories that once made cars and computers now produced weapons and armor. Farms grew food for both human and alien defenders. Most importantly, humans were no longer just following orders. They were making the plans. Captain Sam Parker flew his modified fighter craft over the Nevada desert, testing new weapon systems that made his alien wingmen nervous. Sam had taken a Federation scout ship and added human missile systems, extra armor, and engines that could push the craft far beyond safe limits. The alien pilots called his modifications crazy. Sam called them effective. Dr. Kevin Ross studied reports from battlefields around the world while sitting in his makeshift office in the ruins of Washington, D.C. As Earth's leading military psychologist, he was trying to understand what was happening to humanity. The data showed something that amazed and worried him. Humans were changing, becoming something they had never been before. The siege of New York had lasted 3 months. Krek's forces surrounded the city with weapons that could level entire blocks. They expected the defenders to surrender when food and ammunition ran low. Instead, human engineers found ways to manufacture both inside the siege lines. When Krek's forces finally attacked, they found defenders who had used the time to turn every building into a weapon. Amy Rodriguez commanded the defense from the top floors of what used to be the Empire State Building. Her forces included human, soldiers, alien refugees, and Federation troops who now took orders from her without question. The battle plan she had developed used tactics that Federation military schools said were impossible. The Kreks attacked New York with everything they had. Their massive war machines rolled through the streets while flying vehicles bombed buildings from above. Human defenders disappeared into sewers, subways, and basement levels. When the enemy thought they controlled the surface, the real fighting began. Pete Johnson led his enlarged squad through tunnel systems that connected every major building in downtown Manhattan. They carried weapons that mixed human explosives with alien energy cells. The combination created bombs that could destroy Krek's vehicles in ways their armor wasn't designed to handle. Steve Phillips commanded a fleet of converted civilian ships that had been turned into warships using salvaged alien technology. Cargo vessels carried missile launchers. Passenger ships became troop transports with heavy armor. Even fishing boats were equipped with energy weapons. The Federation officers called it chaos. Steve called it creative. The breakthrough came when Dr. Helen Carter discovered how to reverse engineer Krek's shield technology. Human scientists couldn't build the complex energy fields the Kreks used, but they found a simpler solution. They created armor made from layers of different materials that confused Krek's weapons just as effectively. Lisa Chang's team took Helen's discovery and ran with it. Within weeks, they were producing armor that was lighter and cheaper than anything the Federation could build. More importantly, they were designing it specifically for human tactics. The armor was built for soldiers who moved fast, hit hard, and disappeared before the enemy could respond. Tony Mitchell realized that humanity was becoming something new during the final assault on the Krek's positions around New York. His forces didn't just defeat the enemy, they hunted them. Human soldiers moved through the city like predators, tracking down every Krek's unit and destroying them completely. The alien observers were shocked by what they saw. Federation species fought to defend territory or achieve specific objectives. Humans fought to win completely and permanently. When they decided an enemy needed to be defeated, they didn't stop until that enemy no longer existed. Sam Parker's fighter squadron became legendary during the New York campaign. They flew missions that Federation pilots said were suicide runs, but they always came back. Sam had trained his pilots to think like wolves hunting in packs. They worked together in ways that confused enemy targeting systems. Dr. Kevin Ross published his first report on human psychological changes during warfare. His findings were disturbing to Federation commanders who had expected humans to remain the same primitive species they had first encountered. Instead, the war was revealing capabilities that no one had suspected. The report showed that humans under extreme stress didn't break down like other species. They adapted. They learned. They became more effective fighters the longer the war continued. Most concerning to the Federation, they were starting to enjoy the challenge. Amy Rodriguez's success in New York led to her promotion to overall ground commander for the entire planet. Federation generals who had once dismissed her as a primitive soldier now asked her to train their own forces. Her methods were spreading to alien units throughout the galaxy. The changes weren't just military. Human society was transforming itself to support the war effort. Children learned to maintain alien equipment alongside reading and math. Scientists worked around the clock to develop new weapons. Even artists created propaganda that motivated both human and alien defenders. Pete Johnson found himself commanding not just a squad, but an entire regiment of mixed human and alien forces. The alien soldiers under his command respected him in ways they had never respected their own officers. They followed his orders without question, because they had seen the results he achieved. Steve Phillips was promoted to admiral and given command of Earth's entire space defense fleet. His ships were no longer just converted civilian vessels. Human shipyards were producing new designs that combined the best of human and alien technology. The results were vessels that could outfight anything the Kreks possessed. The Federation began requesting human military advisors for battles throughout the galaxy. Species that had dismissed humans as primitive now begged for human tactical expertise. The soldiers who had once been forced to serve as basic laborers were becoming the teachers of civilizations thousands of years older than Earth. Lisa Chang's research team made another breakthrough when they learned to modify Kreks weapons captured in battle. Human engineers couldn't build the complex technology from scratch, but they could improve it in ways the original designers had never considered. Soon, human forces were using enemy weapons that worked better than when the Kreks used them. Dr. Helen Carter led a team of scientists from a dozen different species, all working to understand and counter Kreks technology. The Federation had originally assigned her to the project as a token primitive. Now she was the lead researcher because her methods produced results faster than anyone else's. The war was changing everyone on Earth, but humans most of all. They were becoming something the galaxy had never seen before. The species that had been dismissed as too primitive for full Federation membership was evolving into the most effective military force known space had ever produced. Tony Mitchell stood on the observation deck of the rebuilt World Trade Center, looking out over a city that had become a fortress. New York had not just survived the siege, it had become stronger. The same was true of humanity itself. The war that was supposed to destroy them was making them into something new and dangerous. The Federation was beginning to realize they had made a serious mistake in their original evaluation of humanity. The species they had thought suitable only for basic labor was teaching the galaxy new ways to fight and win. The primitives were becoming the apex predators, and the universe would never be the same. 2 years into the war, Admiral Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the ESS Titan, humanity's first purpose-built warship. The vessel combined human engineering with captured alien technology in ways that made Federation designers shake their heads in confusion. It shouldn't work according to their theories, but it was the most effective ship in the fleet. Earth was no longer just defending itself. Human forces were taking the fight to the Kreks in star systems across the galaxy. The species that had once been considered suitable only for basic labor was now leading offensive operations that Federation commanders had declared impossible. Colonel Pete Johnson adjusted his new armor as his transport ship approached Proxima Station. The orbital facility had been captured by the Kreks 6 months ago, and 3 Federation attempts to retake it had failed. Now Pete was leading the first all-human assault team to attempt what alien forces could not accomplish. His soldiers were different from the men who had defended Earth 2 years ago. They moved with confidence that came from winning battles others had lost. Their equipment was a mixture of human innovation and alien technology that had been modified beyond recognition. Most importantly, they thought like hunters instead of defenders. Captain Nicole Davis commanded the first ship designed entirely by human engineers using lessons learned from 2 years of war. The ESS Predator was smaller than Federation warships but faster and more maneuverable. Its weapons were designed for the hit-and-run tactics that humans had perfected during the defense of Earth. Nicole's crew had volunteered for the most dangerous mission of the war. They were going to penetrate deep into Krek space and attack enemy supply lines. Federation admirals said it was suicide. Nicole and her crew said it was Tuesday. Professor Helen Carter worked in her new laboratory aboard the Titan, studying the latest Krex technology her teams had captured. The enemy devices were becoming more sophisticated as the war continued, but Helen's understanding was growing even faster. She could now modify Krex weapons within hours of capturing them. The battle for Proxima Station began when Pete Johnson's team approached in ships disguised as cargo vessels. The Krex defenders expected another frontal assault like the Federation had attempted. Instead, the human soldiers used an approach that no species in the galaxy had ever tried. They didn't attack the station at all. They attacked the Krex psychology. Human intelligence teams had been studying enemy communications for months. They had learned that the Krex feared only one thing in the universe. They were terrified of enemies they couldn't predict or control. Pete's mission was to become that enemy. His soldiers infiltrated the station through maintenance tunnels that the Krex didn't know existed. They placed small charges throughout the facility, not enough to cause serious damage, but enough to create constant explosions at random intervals. They sabotaged life support systems to cause minor failures that couldn't be easily repaired. Most effectively, they used captured Krex communication equipment to broadcast recordings of human laughter throughout the station. The sound drove the enemy defenders into a panic that Federation psychological warfare specialists had never achieved. Steve Phillips coordinated the space battle from his flagship, while Pete's teams worked inside the station. His fleet used tactics that confused both allies and enemies. Human ships appeared from impossible angles, struck hard, and disappeared before enemy weapons could lock onto them. The Federation officers observing the battle couldn't understand what they were seeing. Human tactics violated every principle of space warfare they had learned over thousands of years. Ships weren't supposed to work together in such small, flexible groups. Commanders weren't supposed to make decisions that quickly. Tony Mitchell watched the battle reports from his command center on Earth. The success at Proxima Station was part of a larger pattern. Human forces were winning battles throughout the galaxy, using methods that Federation military schools said were impossible. The key was that humans didn't fight like other species. They adapted their tactics to each specific situation instead of following standard procedures. They used psychological warfare as effectively as physical weapons. Most importantly, they never stopped learning from each encounter. Sam Parker led his fighter squadron through the chaos around Proxima Station, hunting Krex ships like wolves chasing prey. His pilots had developed techniques that made enemy targeting systems useless. They could predict where enemy ships would be before the enemy pilots knew themselves. The breakthrough came when Nicole Davis's ship penetrated deep into Krex space and discovered something that changed the entire war. The enemy had a central command station that controlled their entire fleet through quantum communication links. If that station could be destroyed, the Krex would lose coordination across dozens of star systems. Dr. Kevin Ross studied the psychological profiles of Krex prisoners captured during recent battles. His research revealed something that excited and terrified him. The enemy wasn't just losing battles to human forces, they were becoming afraid of humanity itself. Krex communications, intercepted by human intelligence teams, showed that enemy commanders were starting to avoid direct confrontation with human units. They were developing new tactics specifically designed to retreat from human forces rather than fight them. The reputation of human soldiers was spreading throughout both Federation and Krex space. Stories of impossible victories and terrifying tactics were becoming legends. The Terran Devils, as enemy forces had started calling them, were becoming the most feared military units in the galaxy. Amy Rodriguez received reports from human advisors now serving with alien forces throughout Federation space. The tactics and training methods she had developed on Earth were being adapted by dozens of different species. Her influence was reshaping military doctrine across the galaxy. Pete Johnson's assault on Proxima Station succeeded when the Krex defenders abandoned their positions and fled. For the first time in the war, an enemy garrison had retreated without being defeated in battle. They had simply decided that fighting humans wasn't worth the cost. The Federation High Command offered humanity full membership in the galactic community, with territorial rights and representation equal to species that had existed for thousands of years. The offer came with a request that human military advisors be permanently assigned to Federation forces. Lisa Chang's engineering teams were now producing weapons and ships that other species couldn't understand but desperately wanted to purchase. Human technology had evolved from primitive curiosity to the most sought-after military equipment in the galaxy. Helen Carter made another discovery while studying captured Krex equipment. The enemy was starting to modify their own technology to counter human tactics. For the first time in their history, the Krex were adapting their methods to fight a specific enemy. Jake Morrison realized that humanity had crossed a line when Federation species started requesting human protection instead of offering it. The same beings who had once dismissed humans as primitive now felt safer with human soldiers guarding their worlds. Steve Phillips received orders to lead the largest human fleet ever assembled on a mission deep into enemy territory. The objective was to attack the Krex Central Command Station that Nicole Davis had discovered. If successful, the mission could end the war. The fleet that assembled around Earth included ships from a dozen different species, all under human command. Alien crews who had once looked down on human technology now competed for the chance to serve aboard human vessels. Tony Mitchell addressed the combined fleet before departure. His speech was broadcast throughout Federation space and translated into hundreds of languages. He spoke of courage, determination, and the willingness to fight for freedom that had always defined humanity. As the fleet prepared to depart, everyone knew they were witnessing history. The species that had entered the galactic community as servants were now leading the fight for galactic freedom. The primitives had become the protectors, and the galaxy would never underestimate humanity again. The war was entering its final phase, and the hunters were ready to become the apex predators the universe had never seen before. 3 years into the war, Fleet Admiral Jake Morrison commanded the largest military force the galaxy had ever seen. Ships from 40 different species formed battle lines around the Krex homeworld, but everyone knew the human vessels would lead the final assault. The species that had once been dismissed as primitive now held the fate of the galaxy in their hands. The Krex Central Command Station hung in space above their homeworld like a black moon. It was larger than any structure humans had ever built, protected by weapons that had destroyed entire Federation fleets. Every military expert in the galaxy agreed the station was impossible to attack. Every human commander looked at it and saw a target. General Amy Rodriguez stood in the command center of her assault ship, studying holographic displays of the enemy planet below. Her forces included the best soldiers from dozens of species, but the core units were human Marines who had been fighting this war since Earth first became a battlefield. They had evolved from defenders into the most feared ground troops in known space. Admiral Nicole Davis commanded the strike fleet that would punch through the Krex defenses and deliver Amy's troops to the surface. Her ships were designed using 3 years of hard-won experience fighting an enemy that had once seemed invincible. The vessels moved like hunting packs, coordinating attacks in ways that confused enemy targeting systems. Pete Johnson checked his equipment one final time before the assault began. As commander of the elite human special forces, he would lead the mission to destroy the command station's control center. His soldiers were volunteers from every major battle of the war. They had become legends throughout the galaxy, and today they would either end the war or die trying. Dr. Helen Carter worked frantically in her laboratory aboard Jake's flagship, making final modifications to the weapons that would be used in the assault. 3 years of studying Krex technology had taught her something important. The enemy's greatest strength was also their greatest weakness. Their technology was so advanced that it couldn't adapt to unexpected situations. The battle began when human ships attacked from directions the Kreks had thought impossible. Nicole's fleet used gravitational slingshots around asteroids and moons to approach at angles no computer had calculated. The enemy's perfect defensive positions became useless when the attack came from everywhere at once. Steve Phillips commanded the diversionary attack that drew Krek's forces away from the main assault. His ships broadcast fake communications and false sensor readings that convinced the enemy they were facing the real attack. By the time the Kreks realized their mistake, human forces were already inside their defensive lines. Tony Mitchell coordinated the entire operation from his command ship, watching as 3 years of human tactical innovation came together in one massive battle. His forces moved with precision that amazed alien observers. Every unit knew its role, every commander understood the plan, and everyone was ready to adapt when the plan inevitably changed. The Kreks fought with desperation born of facing their first real defeat. Their weapons carved through space and shattered human ships, but for every vessel they destroyed, 2 more appeared to take its place. The galaxy had united behind humanity's leadership, and the combined fleet was unstoppable. Sam Parker led his fighter squadrons through the chaos of the space battle, hunting enemy ships with skills perfected over years of combat. His pilots flew with coordination that made them seem like extensions of a single mind. They protected the assault transports carrying Amy's ground forces while engaging enemy fighters in battles that lit up the darkness between worlds. Amy's troops landed on the Krek's homeworld under cover of the space battle above. The planet's surface was a maze of industrial complexes and defensive positions that had never been attacked in the Kreks' long history. Human soldiers disappeared into the maze and began the systematic destruction of enemy resistance. Lisa Chang's engineering teams had spent months preparing for this moment. They had developed weapons specifically designed to destroy Krek's technology, using the enemy's own power sources against them. As human forces advanced across the planet, enemy installations exploded from within as their own energy systems became weapons. Pete Johnson's Special Forces team infiltrated the command station using captured Krek's transport ships. The enemy's security was designed to stop external attacks, not soldiers who had already penetrated their defenses. Pete's team moved through the massive structure like ghosts, placing charges and disabling systems as they advanced toward the control center. Dr. Kevin Ross monitored communications from the battlefield, analyzing the psychological impact of the human assault on enemy forces. His report showed that Krek's resistance was collapsing faster than military predictions had suggested. The enemy wasn't just being defeated, they were being broken by an opponent they couldn't understand or predict. The breakthrough came when Helen Carter's modified weapons began turning Krek's defensive systems against each other. Enemy shield generators started targeting their own ships. Weapon platforms fired on their own bases. The technology that had made the Kreks invincible became the instrument of their destruction. Jake Morrison watched from his bridge as the space battle turned into a rout. Krek's ships that had terrorized the galaxy for months were fleeing in panic from human-led forces. The command structure that had held their empire together was collapsing as the central station came under direct attack. Amy's ground forces reached the base of the command station just as Pete's team prepared to destroy its control center. The coordination was perfect, with surface troops providing cover while special forces completed their mission. 3 years of fighting together had turned human military units into a weapon unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The explosion that destroyed the Krek's command center could be seen from orbit. Pete Johnson and his team had not only completed their mission, but survived to watch enemy resistance crumble across the planet below. The quantum communication links that controlled Krek's forces throughout the galaxy went silent, leaving enemy units leaderless and confused. Steve Phillips received surrender offers from Krek's commanders in 17 different star systems within hours of the command station's destruction. The enemy empire that had seemed unstoppable was falling apart without central coordination. The war that had threatened to destroy galactic civilization was ending in complete human victory. Tony Mitchell addressed the galaxy from the deck of his flagship as Krek's forces surrendered throughout known space. His speech was broadcast to billions of beings across hundreds of worlds. He spoke of unity, courage, and the price of freedom that had been paid by soldiers from every species in the galaxy. The Federation was restructured with humanity as a full member with territorial rights equal to the oldest civilizations in the galaxy. Earth became the center of a new human colonial authority that would protect dozens of worlds. The species that had entered galactic society as servants were now among its most powerful leaders. Nicole Davis was promoted to Admiral of the Fleet and given command of the galaxy's most advanced warships. Her tactical innovations had become standard procedure for military forces throughout Federation space. The woman who had once commanded a single experimental ship now shaped military doctrine for entire civilizations. Amy Rodriguez established the first human military academy on Earth, where officers from dozens of species came to learn the tactics that had won the war. Her methods were studied and copied throughout the galaxy, but no species could quite match the combination of innovation and determination that defined human warfare. Jake Morrison looked out at Earth from his orbital command station, watching as the planet that had once been dismissed as primitive became the heart of galactic civilization. Alien ships filled the space around Earth, carrying diplomats, traders, and students who wanted to learn from humanity's example. The galaxy had learned a lesson that would not be forgotten. Never underestimate a species based on their technology or their history. The humans who had been classified as primitive had possessed something more valuable than advanced weapons or ancient wisdom. They had possessed the ability to grow, adapt, and become whatever the situation required. Earth was no longer a backwater world on the edge of civilization. It was the proving ground where the galaxy's greatest warriors had been forged in the fire of total war. Humanity had claimed its place not through conquest but through proving themselves when everything was on the line. The primitives had become the apex predators, and the universe would never be the same.